I went to 4 zoos in 4 days while moving across the country from Missouri to Maryland. It's day number 4, the last day of my trip. Let's go to a zoo.
Hey y'all, we're about to check out of this hotel in Pittsburgh and we're on our way to the zoo. We're only about a mile and a half away, so it shouldn't be too long now. Alright, last zoo of the trip. It's gonna be a good one. See you soon.
It didn't take long at all to get to the Pittsburgh Zoo, as long as you don't include the 3 days that led up to this. I decided to take the Zoo Fit path because I've been driving a lot and it's always nice to get some exercise, the road less traveled, you know. I feel like most people can relate. I know I personally wonder how things could have been different if different options were chosen at different times, but it really takes you away from the here and now. That's the thing that shapes the future. A good walk will put you back in the proper headspace. One thing I can say for certain about the Pittsburgh Zoo is that it's a good walk. Pittsburgh doesn't have the largest zoo, a struggle being located in the city proper, but small zoo doesn't mean a bad zoo at all. I was visiting during a time when they were putting up their lanterns for their lantern festival. It was neat to see all the artistry that went into these lanterns, framed and shaped in a variety of animals. I didn't see much of real animals until I made it to the African savanna. There was a huge ruckus going on amongst the flamingos, but perhaps it was simply close to feeding time. Back at the St. Louis Zoo, the keepers would carry around the flamingos like a suitcase under the arm. You couldn't really do that with the rhinoceros, except for when it's a baby. Unfortunately, at the Pittsburgh Zoo, I wasn't able to see a rhinoceros. I had to make do with all of the infographical signs. There were a couple lionesses lounging about in the morning sun. And there was 1 or 2 school groups that was there as well. I dodged around them. A lot of people might find kids to be annoying. They were roaring loudly at the lions. But kids are going to be kids. They're still figuring out how to operate in the world. And, that's something that we can relate to animals with too. If you're a tortoise, you might not raise your young. But if you're a lion, or say an more leopard, you might raise your young for a few years, and that prolonged childhood is evidence of a greater intelligence. The human's prolonged childhood is evidence of our intelligence. So, you gotta give kids a break, they have a lot to learn. But we're not the only ones that are really smart on this planet. There's all kinds of intelligence. Elephants are one animal that are definitely super intelligent. I was able to see elephants at the Pittsburgh Zoo, so that means I saw elephants at all 4 zoos I visited. While I was visiting the Pittsburgh Zoo's elephants, a group of elderly individuals was trammed in on the Pittsburgh Zoo tram. They were receiving the full treatment, private tour, comfortable ride, all the facts. I wouldn't be surprised if they even got meal vouchers. I was able to catch a few fun facts about the elephants, and then I proceeded to share those with some guests that were just standing next to me. The whole experience reminded me that there are so many other things to do at zoos besides just walking through. There are tours and behind-the-scenes experiences at all 4 zoos I visited. I've decided that the next time I visit one, I'll have to do one of those experiences. The giraffe habitat couldn't compare to the habitat at Columbus, but Pittsburgh has to use its space in a much different way. Every zoo faces a different type of challenge. These zoos will be adapted to the local populations and environments. As I've mentioned before in this series, there is a lot to consider when operating a zoo. The Pittsburgh Zoo is broken up into zones that focus on different ecosystems of the globe. Next we enter a building called the Tropical Jungle, which features many primates from around the world. Immediately you notice all the awesome plant life. These 2 ring-tailed lemurs don't want anything to do with the other one. They were totally excluded, which is a form of bullying. Not cool, lemurs. Not cool at all. Each habitat had plenty of space to climb with giant ceilings throughout the building. In St. Louis, the building housing the primates is historic, and the habitats are smaller than those we see here in Pittsburgh. St. Louis has recently opened a huge expansion to their primate habitat, though, to compensate for the historic building's downsides. How will Pittsburgh improve its primate care in the future? It seems they take awesome care of their primates because this spider monkey only has 1 arm, and he seems to be doing just fine. Sometimes perhaps the best thing to do at any zoo is phase an animal out. If the resources can't be provided to adequately home a species, then maybe the tough decisions need to be made. When looking at the orangutan especially, I wonder if this modern zoo building is modern enough. People can get stuck in their ways and avoid new ideas. The Pittsburgh Zoo has in recent years experienced tensions with the city and disputes over how to care for elephants. The Pittsburgh Zoo forfeited its long-held accreditation from the AZA. This puts the zoo in violation of their lease with the city, and while the loss of accreditation doesn't necessarily mean there's a decline in animal care, without the accreditation, there's not as much trust in the institution. How can they expect to help if the public doesn't trust them? Hopefully the Pittsburgh Zoo figures out this accreditation thing soon, for the sake of the animals, as well as for themselves.
It's about 11 o'clock here at the Pittsburgh Zoo. Very slow day. A lot of the animals are just kind of lying around. But we're going to keep going.
On the fourth day of my zoo trip, I was really feeling all the zoo days. My pace had substantially slowed. The beginning excitement I felt that first day was left back in the weekend. I had been as busy as a bee darting across the country, but my human physique grew weary. It seemed a particular kind of day, one that didn't entertain much amusement. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it wasn't raining, but there was an airy array of sun. The zoo seemed eerily quiet. There wasn't much going on, the few guests scattering across the grounds migrated in small packs vastly independent of each other. It was unlike any other day of my trip so far, and maybe that was fitting because it was my last day. But at Pittsburgh, you can have a beer where there used to be bears, which is strange, but also fascinating. The next area on the Pittsburgh Zoo's path was the Islands. The Islands isn't the largest part of the Pittsburgh Zoo, containing only a few animals, but it does boast the distinction of having the biggest beach chair at the zoo, which is very impressive. Here at the Islands, you can see animals like the Philippine crocodile, the Visean warty pig, the false gorel, the Siming, the clouded leopard, and the Aldabra tortoise. These are all pretty cool animals if you ask me. Here the Simangs are very active, and the pigs were very active. But of course, the tortoise and the clouded leopards were not so active. Here is also the Animal Care Center and a VR theater where you can watch a few different VR experiences. I tried it out, and I was the only person in the theater. I thought it would be more interesting to watch, but my experience was kind of boring from the outside. It was really cool watching it, though, having the sharks all around you. It was kind of scary, but not really. It was probably more scary for the scuba divers, but they're probably used to it. After the islands comes the Jungle Odyssey. It takes you up to the very top of the hill upon which the zoo stands. Following a series of switchbacks, you stroll through a garden path with small Easter eggs before reaching the anteaters. At the St. Louis Zoo, the anteater was basically a phantom. They say that she was older than thought possible, and in her geriatric age preferred her climate-controlled suite to her outdoors habitat. No matter what they did to coax her out, they never could. One coworker claimed a sighting many years ago, though this remains unconfirmed. So it was cool to see not one, but two anteaters running around in Pittsburgh. Having not seen one very often, it's always surprising to see how big they are. These are fully the size of a fully grown human. The Pittsburgh Zoo also has a pygmy hippopotamus. I've never seen a pygmy hippopotamus before, and this is certainly the tiniest hippopotamus I've ever seen, and she is certainly a cute one. From the very top of the hill, you can look back at most of the zoo, but you can't see much through all the trees. They say that hindsight is 20/20, but maybe you can't see much then either. Maybe the trees of time and emotions obscure memory. I like to think of the past as sort of like a reference guide for the future. You have these experiences that boil down to something you can remember, then you use those experiences to affect how you act in the present. Changing how you act in the present can then change what future you head towards. It's like driving cross country. If you make this turn or that one, you might end up on time, but you might end up getting a little bit lost. Of all the zoos I had the privilege of visiting, Pittsburgh Zoo had the best aquarium. The name of this aquarium is the PPG Aquarium. There were some benches out front, so I took a moment to rest. I ended up talking with one of the zookeepers here at the aquarium. I learned about the Pittsburgh Zoo's program of rehabilitating sea turtles. When the turtles are ready, a bunch of turtles and zookeepers take an all-night road trip south to release those turtles in prime habitat. I even saw the tanks that held the turtles, though they're empty now after another successful release. There are a lot of fish in the world, and subsequently there are a lot of things that eat fish in the world, like these penguins. Watch as they put on a show fueled by fish. And they even have a bow to finish. Aside from the penguins, the aquarium had all kinds of exotic and native fish. I love seeing these tiny little shrimp. Just look at this little dude go. There was even a huge tank that was the height of 2 stories. Inside they had a few sharks swimming around, and it was almost like the VR movie that I watched only a few moments before. I really enjoyed the PPG aquarium at the Pittsburgh Zoo. The mixture of different habitats and creatures made it very interesting to walk through, and the final area had tons of natural light that added to the atmosphere. The Indianapolis Zoo didn't have that wow factor like Pittsburgh, but they did have dolphins. I picked up a book in Pittsburgh all about dolphins, and it was very revelatory. It's sad to think about how people will act for the reasons they do. We are presented with so many choices every single day. There are so many factors at play, and not everyone thinks about the consequences. How can we do good in a way that is really substantial? There used to be a peacock that roamed around the St. Louis Zoo, but there is no longer, so it was nice seeing one in Pittsburgh. It really brought back some old memories. The Water's Edge is one of the final areas of the final zoo of my trip. Here, there's a replica fishing village to show visitors what it might be like in the native region of these areas' star animal, the polar bear. In my experience, it is unlikely that you will see the polar bear doing much else besides lying around. The fur is so well insulated that moving vigorously might cause the polar bear to overheat. Perhaps this is why you don't see them move much. Sea otters were doing some flips, but they were a boring everyday kind of flip. You walk past a faded mural of sea lions to find some sea lions swimming lazily around the pool. It might be easy to come to a zoo on a day like today and see a bunch of animals moping around and conclude that zoos don't do enough for their animals. You can go to a zoo and have the exact opposite experience. It's just all a matter of perspective and what information you have available to us. The latter half of my Pittsburgh day was just as slow as the beginning. If you trust me, there is an alligator down there. You can learn that Pittsburgh lost their accreditation, and assume that the zoo is a terrible place for animals, and then never visit in your life. Or you can visit and go with an open mind and see for yourself what's good and what's bad. I can't help but think about my life as I travel across the country. I've come to the realization that I'm not that old, but I'm the oldest that I've ever been. It has always been that way, and that's probably why I think I've got it all figured out in terms of what's good and what's bad. I think I'm so wise because I'm the oldest I've been, but then I turn around and see that there are many, many more years to come to show me that I don't know that much about anything at all. It's an almost constant cycle of thinking I know a thing or two, and then realizing I don't know a thing at all. Hopefully my next dose of wisdom will give me the tools to deal with these frustrations, because it sure is frustrating. At the end of the Pittsburgh Zoo, there are some farm animals like pigs and llamas, and another angle to look at the sea lions. Hey y'all, it's just past 1 o'clock here, and we're almost done with the Pittsburgh Zoo. It's been pretty good so far, but I'm excited to hit the road. There's some more lanterns up the path that leads to the beginning of the zoo, and the forest passage. Right before I leave, I have the privilege to once again see a magnificent tiger. I won't make it out to be anything more than it is, but I felt like it was a fitting final animal to see on my big zoo trip. So we're heading out. We're done with the zoos now, and the final stop is my destination. Let's go. What's up? Back in the car after the Pittsburgh Zoo. It was a nice walk. It wasn't confusing at all. And they got the Lantern Festival going on, so they got all that set up. It was really nice.
but now I have a 4-hour drive. Probably gonna get some food.
After 4 long days, the only thing left before me was a long drive. I did get some food. It was a beef jerky stick from a gas station, but I saw Taco Bell right after and I wish I had gotten that instead. Writing the script retroactively allows me to reflect on some of the big things in this trip, like that Taco Bell thing. There is a downside though because I'm not able to recall everything that happened. I wish I had took better notes on my trip. I can't tell you what I was thinking about on this final leg of my move. I remember feeling nervous and excited all at once. Every minute brought me closer to my new home. If you're feeling cautious about doing something big, it's alright. My advice would be to just do the thing, even if it scares you. Making this big move scared me. Even months in now, I'm a little scared about what happens next. Yet, I don't allow fear to be the decider of what I do and what I don't do. I swallow that fear and push ahead for an ultimate goal in life, which is to do things. All kinds of things, memorable things and dynamic things. I want to do enough things to fill up a whole lifetime, and I don't want to be too boring. I'm alright with little drollness, which means I'll continue to share it here online. Another chapter in my life begins, in a new place, with new people, and all kinds of new things to experience. I've got a car full of things, and I get my new keys. These things I bring with me, they're not useless. My experiences could guide me, and with an open heart, I can be guided by others. These things fill me up with joy and light up my world. They are interesting to others, and we can share in their enjoyment. This life I live is the same. I had such an amazing time on this trip. Anytime you get to do something, do it to the fullest you can. I visited 4 zoos in 4 days, but I know there are so many more zoos for me to visit out there still. There are so many more things to do, and I'm excited to try them out. So thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe for more.